So we don't want to overdraw these parallels between the time of Eisenhower and the time that we live in today, but I am curious, with two people who spent a lot of time studying Ike, what would he recognize the Republican Party of today, and could he be a part of it?
I don't think so. I think he would feel so incredibly distant from it. Even back in 1953, he looked at the party and felt not really a part of it. And at one time he said, I think we're becoming the Eisenhower party. He was and not a Republican party. At one point he even thought about a third party. He really was sui generis. He was a national hero. And he was a fiscal conservative, but he really was his own man. And in those days, there was also a conflict between the two parts of the party. There were the Midwestern conservatives, which had a strong isolationist strain, people like Robert Taft of Ohio, and there was the Eastern liberal wing, led by people like Tom Dewey and Henry Cabot Lodge Jr. That wing has pretty well vanished, and I would say that the Midwestern conservative wing has pretty well vanished too. It was a wing that still supported things like, for example, Taft, who was considered the Mr. Republican. He supported old age pensions for everyone over 65, and this was a Republican. That strain has vanished from the party. And so I don't think Eisenhower would feel at home at all. I think he would feel this party has self-destructed, has combusted, and he would be something else today.
You see the same way?
I agree that he wouldn't feel comfortable in today's Republican Party, but I think he would recognize it, and there's a difference. It's tempting to think that Ike could come back from the dead and take the Republican leadership out to the woodshed with his favorite 9-iron and go after them, but and say, well, come on, folks, get your business together. But I think Eisenhower would recognize a strain of xenophobia, of vulgarity, of insecurity, of anxiety that we're seeing in today's GOP. It's maybe not the mainstream, though it seems to have captured the mainstream in the Republican primaries in 2016. Eisenhower would recognize that because the Republican Party in 1953 had some of those very same kinds of figures in it. We know, of course, about Joe McCarthy, and we all often think that McCarthy was there in 53, between 50 and 54, raging against communism and internal subversion. But Joe McCarthy was not alone. There were plenty of Republicans in the Senate, fellows of McCarthy, who supported him, who rallied to him, who bayed and howled and loved it when he got into it on his various committees. And I think it is a strain that has been present in the GOP, really in American politics, which is hostility to foreigners, anxiety about internal subversion of various kinds. And Ike would say, look, I'm sorry that this strain has persisted for the 70 years that I've been away, but I see some of these same figures. I mean, Styles Bridges of New Hampshire and William Jenner of Indiana, Herman Welker of Idaho. These are names that have been lost to us now, but who were major figures, polarizing figures, and I would say they were off the spectrum of the right wing. They had crossed over into a kind of loony land in the 1950s, and so I'm afraid Eisenhower might say, I know these people.